So we have Mark Kashman with us over here, and as everybody knows, Mark is a major player when it comes down to SharePoint and Teams and Microsoft List and everybody else over here. Mark's been working with SharePoint since 2000, Mark?
My first version that I worked on for the team was 2007. So technically it was around 2009.
Wow.
And rolling into basically being one of the first product managers for the SharePoint Online part of it.
Wow. So one of the first product managers for SharePoint Online. Just think about that. So Mark, thank you so much for
the gray hair comes in.
Yeah, I've been doing SharePoint since SharePoint 2007 as well. So I think that a good amount of my gray hair might be, contributing towards that effort that I put in for SharePoint 2007.
Yeah, they usually tell you that the gray hair comes from your children. I have two, and they're now almost taller than me. But I can attribute maybe the left side to my children and the right side to SharePoint.
So with that being said, so if you can shed some light on what kind of speaking sessions have you been, speaking on at this conference, and shed some light on what do you see Microsoft going towards?
Yeah, so we kicked off in the keynote. Chris McNulty and I co-keynoted, and so we kicked off and covered a lot to give a little air cover to some of the things that we personally focus on, but also on behalf of Microsoft to be able to bring in, some of the news and announcements that have been recent, and also we knew what a lot of people were going to be covering here at the conference. So to open up the conference, and then the expectation would be that if you want to learn more about something that we talked about. So we kicked off and we focused on Microsoft Viva and some of the new announcements, plus a little context of the full suite. Really, how does Microsoft support the employee experience through ways of broader engagement to even things that are new, like Viva Engage for community organizing, and even what we call personal stories. And one of the new things that we have is Viva Goals, which was based on an acquisition that we did a little over a year ago. It started as an ally.io website, and based on the acquisition, the intent was to have that now as an app in Teams. And so it was good timing, because on August 1st is when they went GA, general release. And so the Viva Suite, as it builds and builds up, it was fun to highlight some of those things, both in conversation and also some of the demos. Chris spent some time talking about Sharepoint Syntax, and it has also been out for a while, and some of the newer innovation will come and be announced next at the end of this year. But he really showed how bringing in documents at scale and automating how you can automatically tag and derive content from the actual document, but at scale, like upload 100 documents and you can pull out a lot of the metadata without then having to manually add it. Some of what I demoed, and one of the areas that I focus on, is Microsoft Lists. So really highlighting, making sure people know Microsoft Lists evolves from SharePoint Lists. And on top of that, we've really brought some new experiences with mobile apps, so we now have it for iOS and Android. Some of the ways that you can use lists in Teams for not only managing information, but then collaborating on individual list items. And I really highlighted the new board view that we have. So if you have things that are a little bit more oriented around a business process, you can drag and drop reorder, and the metadata gets updated as you move from a different column or a different bucket. And then I also showed the latest thing that we landed for lists, which is 3 of our templates have the ability, when you create it from a template, that automatically a flow gets associated to it. So instead of manually creating the flow, it already gets created for you. And it's mostly focused around reminders, and it's highly customizable if you need it, or it is free to use right out of the box. The last one, as far as the keynote, was we touched on Microsoft Loop. And to be honest, that was the thing that most people afterwards came up and asked about. Oh, I can see myself using that, or our team will really benefit from being able to spin up a quick list, or a quick table, or a quick paragraph. And it's flexible, where you're not spinning up a full document. You're really just focused on, I need to put an agenda together, or I need a quick table, and maybe these are the sessions that we're going to do at the next event. And there's a lot of use cases. And what I showed on stage was a chat that I already had going with about 15 people, and created the new table and asked everybody to populate it, which to me was the easiest demo I've ever done, because then I get to sit there for 30 seconds and you can watch other people basically co-author a table, not a document, not an Excel spreadsheet, but just the table, and you can see where everybody's working, and it's pretty compelling. And to be honest, I've used it, a number of times for lots of different scenarios for myself. And it's really easy because I know where to get back to it. If somebody makes a change, it's real time for me, even if I'm not in the chat at that time. And you can share it in a chat, in an email, or even on office.com. You'll see all of your loops starting to show up.
Wow, that's a lot of things which are coming out from Microsoft ever since the last time I interviewed you, which was, I think that before pandemic, and this was in New York, that's where we met, right?
Yes.
And there was talk about Microsoft List, but I mean, things that you're telling me, it does not even look like Microsoft List anymore. It just does not even, we know that it's a derivative of the SharePoint List, but there's so much going in there that Microsoft is putting so much investment in Microsoft List, Viva, Loops, and then SharePoint Syntax that, I mean, I just love these tools. Do you see these tools really being democratized by the whole community?
Yeah, by the community, by our customers, obviously extended by our partners. The one thing in the keynote, as an example to what you're asking, we had a customer that's local from the Dallas area, from the Toyota Motor North America, and his name is Srini Arol, and he is the sales manager, regional manager for the local plants. They have about 15 plants that he helps operate, and of course there's a lot of other people involved. And he talked about the way that they were adapting the technology, some of the ways they were extending teams, some of the ways they just got to the cloud, leveraging some of the migration tools to get to OneDrive, to establish new ways of collaborating, and then specific to the Power Platform, which I think a lot of companies did some form of this, but they specifically built a Power app so that employees, if they were working from home or at times maybe coming to work on site, because a lot of their business is in the factory and on the floor, and they could check, am I healthy? Did I, last get a negative test? They could attest to certain things that would get tracked and logged. But for the end user, for the person who's, in the factory or maybe roaming and going to multiple floors, they were able to use the app on a daily basis to be able to check in and also to see, are these sites, is there any, COVID instances that they need to know about? Certainly then that site gets shut down or they block off certain areas. But they call it Safe at Work. That's the name of their app. And it was something they built within, I think, they designed it in a few days, built it in a few weeks, and had it rolled out very quickly in response to COVID, for sure. But they talked about how it may evolve into just an app that employees can use that aggregates a lot of different information and ways that they can then, as employees, provide information back to the company. So in essence, this notion of being safe at work is something that they then can promote and of course track and help manage throughout anybody that is touching any of these areas. But again, it was just their empowerment of investments that they've made and for the use cases that they really require.
Wow. Yeah, I see. I've been riding the Power Platform wave ever since it hit the market, and yeah.
Is it getting too big?
It is. That wave is getting pretty big. So far it's manageable. AQL Technologies does a lot of Power Platform. Power Apps, Power Automate, RPA, Power BI, and then not PVA, and then now Power Pages as well. So can you give us an inside scoop into what is the next Power coming out? I promise you I promise that I won't let anybody know about it.
Breaking news: there's going to be a Power Viva. No,
Okay.
I'm just kidding. There's a lot of information coming. If you stay tuned, Ignite is just around the corner. But before Ignite, actually specific to the Power Platform, is the Power Platform Conference. So it's a third-party event. You can expect Microsoft to have a big footprint in it. There will be a keynote from Charles Lamanna, and I have a little active role in it because Jeff Tieper will also have a keynote there. So just put it on your calendars. You don't have to attend. Obviously, the news will get out. If you want to attend and go deep on the Power Platform, that's the place. But that will be September 20th through the 22nd in Orlando, Florida. And it's the roundabout way to say that's where you're going to get all the news. But I know a lot of what they're working on is extending the capabilities of Power Automate, integration work that they're doing with a lot of the different apps. I know a lot of the work that we're doing with Power Automate for those 3 list templates I mentioned will extend to additional templates and some of the ways that we want to make that easier to work with without leaving teams. So the notion of the work that they've done so that you can work with Power Apps and Power Automate inside of teams, we want to take advantage of that too from a list perspective. But I got a lot of new information from April Dunham, who is my peer, but into the community. She's pretty much a power addict on the Power Platform, and she leads a lot of training and news and information, but she's also, somebody who's pretty well informed. And we actually had her on a unique session here to basically talk to our Intrazone, which is a podcast that I do. And so we had a live session that we'll edit when we get back to the Redmond area and put it into the podcast feed. But the focus was to talk to April and to learn a little bit about her, a lot about some of the new news. You mentioned RPA, Power Pages. There's some automation around some of the mechanisms to help roll out efficiently some of the Power Platform. And I'm spacing on, there was one area that we touched on of innovation that might be not news, but new to others. But she gave a really great drill down into the Power Platform value and, of course, places where people can go and learn more.
Yeah, so I did interview her today, and then she had some time to attend my RPA session as well. So yeah, I was able to. She did, and then I was able to share some information with her. And so by the way, so the Power Platform Conference, yes, AQL, we are going to be there, and we are also one of the sponsors. I put in a request for a speaking session over there as well, but I heard that they were overwhelmed with speakers. And good part is that, and good part about the conference is that 80% of the speakers over there are Microsoft speakers. So a lot of that information is coming right from Microsoft.
Yeah, from the top down. So Charles Lamanna, who reports at the very top as far as the Power Platform is concerned, he's going to be sharing some news. He's going to be highlighting a lot of the newness. Not necessarily everything will be breaking news. And he'll really set context with what he's seeing, both customers and partners, building on top of the platform. I think there's a ton of innovation that you see that's being plumbed through Teams. There's a lot of innovation that they'll talk about that's going to Dynamics 365. And Jeff's whole keynote is really framed around how does the Power Platform integrate with Microsoft 365? And you might have a little awareness of where my focus is, SharePoint, Teams, lists, but Jeff's portfolio is pretty broad. So he's really looking at the Power Platform from a Power Automate perspective, mesh that's coming in and being able to do some of that virtual work. They're doing some unique and interesting things in that space with meetings. And then just was looking at his, also around just managing apps. So as people are building apps using the Power Platform and bringing those into either SharePoint or Teams to be able to give more control so that admins know when solutions are created, if there's anything that they need to manage and control with solutions that maybe shouldn't have been created, those kinds of things, to give IT a little bit more control and management of Power Platform apps that land in the Microsoft 365 space.
That looks like a lot of things to do, in what you guys are doing. It feels, I think that if I were you, it would just fill my plate. So how do you guys handle the madness up there?
So the madness is manageable because there's a lot of great people that I lean on, and certainly that folks that lean on me. Getting great direction from Charles and Jeff. If you think of it from a conference perspective, here's our core focus. Let's focus on this, not that. But where it really starts from, if you go back, a couple of steps, is customer feedback. So we get it through lots of channels. That's why I'm here. That's why a lot of people that I work with come to present what we know, but to also listen. So we held an AMA, which is an Ask Microsoft Anything, and it was a really well-attended session. It also has a SharePoint connected to it, so there's always encouragement, if you want free pizza or some beverages. But we had a really active audience with a lot of great questions, and even though they're just questions and answers, sometimes it's just in the form of feedback, because we might not have an answer, or it may be just, I hope that you know X. And with a panel of about 9 people, usually X lands pretty specifically. One example is there were some security, not concerns, but just some security questions that maybe would lean into a concern. And one of our specialists was from the SharePoint security team. His name is Seshamani. And just an example, he took one piece of feedback that was in the form of a question, and just to know that he really is listening. I mean, I just know this. I've worked with him a lot. And to hear him phrase, that's really good feedback. That's something that we should be aware of. Thank you. And we'll get some information to you when we can in terms of design or how they might adjust it. Or it's just an answer. Yes, you can do that, and here's how.
Well, that's a lot of information, and especially thank you so much for telling us what happens back there in the mothership. I really appreciate that. You have given us some really interesting, news scoop, and thank you so much. One last question: where's home?
Home for me is pretty close to where home is for Microsoft, at least the headquarters. So if you look on a map, find Seattle, go 13 miles east, that's Redmond. That's where Microsoft has its main campus. If you go another 10 miles, that's Sammamish. So I live in Sammamish, Washington, and if any of your audience can spell Sammamish in the first try without looking it up, I'll send you a pair of Microsoft List socks.
Well, here's homework, guys. Get started. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah,
very nice meeting you again.
Absolutely. Thank